So I just said it's coffee breaks are always too small. So we always need time to talk. That's good. But also we would like to spend some time on listening. So and this is the last session of our presentation today. You've seen a lot of the technologies that were developed and technology solutions, but we also have a larger part of the project was also dedicated to what kind of impact creates these technologies. And this session now, it's about where we look on the consumer engagement, sustainability, and health. And I would like to ask Klaus Grunert to come to the stage. Yes, thank you very much. Klaus is a work package leader for the consumer engagement study, and you are from the professor at the marketing at the Aarhus University and the founder of the MAPP. Maybe you can let us know what MAPP is. I was wondering also what's.
Okay, that's. I was not prepared for that question there, but MAPP originally was an acronym for Market-Based Process and Product Innovation in the Food Sector. But MAPP has been around for more than 30 years, and most people have forgotten what the acronym is about, but it still has a brand value, so it stays. MAPP is a research center that deals with research on consumer behavior with regard to food and drink, for those that don't know. So that's also what I will talk a little bit about here. I will talk about the role of the consumer in short or local food supply chains. The whole idea about short food supply chains, obviously, is that the whole chain, from the beginning at the farm to the end, namely the consumer, is in the same region. And that, of course, also means that without the consumer, nothing is happening. Also, we need the consumer to be on board if we want to promote short food supply chains. And that is what this year is all about. And it's in particular two questions that I would like to address here. The first, how can we assure, or what is the potential for actually to engage consumers with short supply chains? Because not everybody is interested in local food, and just be interested in local food is also not enough if we want people really to support the build-up of local supply chains. So that's the first question. How can we actually engage consumers with short supply chains of the type we work with in the Fox project? And the other question has to do with that the basic idea in Fox has been that we enable short supply chains also for processed products, because we move the processing to where the food is being produced. That's the whole idea. But we also know that many consumers have an ambivalent relationship to food technology, and especially to modern food technology. Many consumers are skeptical. We have many examples for that. So when we put a container close to them where they can look at the technology and see it, how will they react to that? And we don't know that, actually. It could be positive if they have a hands-on experience. It could also be something else. So that's another aspect we have been looking a little bit at. How do we actually inform consumers about the technology, and how will they react to that one here? So starting with this first question here about short supply chains and consumer engagement. As I already said, short supply chains presuppose that everybody, all actors are committed to it. But now I will first talk about consumers, and actually I will come a little bit back to the other actors a little later. But this year is, of course, mainly about consumers. Now, what does it mean to be engaged? Actually, consumer engagement in marketing is a hot topic for the moment. And consumer engagement in the marketing world means that a supplier has contact with their buyers also when they're not buying. That there is communication about the production, about the product, about the use of the product experience, all kinds of things, also when people are not buying. That's a relatively new phenomenon, because normally it only works if people are local, close to each other. But since we have social media now, it also can be done in a broader area. And engagement is a really good thing. It's good for the suppliers because it helps them developing and selling products. But it's also good actually from a food production and sustainability point of view, because when consumers are engaged and are in contact with the food supply chain, you also get a better understanding of how food is being produced and the impact that food production has. It has an impact on the valuation of food, which many people claim is too low, and things like that. So actually engagement is a really good thing, and that's also why we have been looking at engagement in this project here. So we've been doing some work here in the Fox project in the 6 Fox regions, forming the 4 food circles in Fox, looking at the engagement potential of consumers. And we've been working with this model here. What we want to explain, what we want to assess is the likelihood of consumers of engaging with the local food circle. And we have a number of indicators for that: people's interest in talking to the farmers, people's interest in the technology, people's willingness to buy the product, people's willingness to talk to others about what's going on, different aspects that we usually associate with engagement. And of course, it has to do with the attitudes that people have formed to what's going on, to the actors and the technology that they are now employing here in the region, to the products coming out of that, but also to the channels of communication that are being used. And we believe that this will have, whether people are positive, will have something to do with people's motives, with people's existing food habits, and with the trust that they have in the food chain. And the trust is actually a difficult thing, because one thing is that these short supply chains in the long run can increase the trust, because the food chain becomes more transparent for people. On the other hand, if people don't have trust, they may not be willing to engage in the local food chain either. So we have a chicken and egg problem actually with trust building in the food chain that we also can see here. Now, we have measured a number of things that we believe can be related to engagement with local food chains in the project, both at the beginning of the project and at the end of the project. And here we see mean values mainly for a number of food motives. And we see that a number of them have values which create opportunities for the creation of local food chains. We see that people score relatively highly on green consumption values, on what is called communalization, which is the belief that it's good to support the local food production and the local actors in opposition to the big global value chains. We have high values for the motives for health, natural and also convenient food, because obviously there's also a convenience factor in local food chains, and in the desire for food authenticity, all of which is in line with the basic philosophy that we have in the food project. And then we have one which is maybe a challenge, and that is a trust. The trust is not so high, and that is nothing new. We know that from many studies that on average the level of trust in actors in the food chain is not enormously high. Another thing worth looking at is the differences or the lack of differences between the baseline and the end line. The baseline we did when the project started. The end line we did just here at the end of last year. And you know, of course, that in that period a lot of things have been happening. We had a corona pandemic. We had last year a situation of inflation and rising prices for food and energy. So it's not self-evident that these values have stayed largely the same. But that is what we find. Now, the values are largely the same. Also, the values for example, green consumption values, the interest in health and natural content, the desire for food authenticity, all of this is largely the same. So even though we have had all of these things happening, it has not resulted in that the potential for engagement in local food chains here has or we wouldn't expect that to decline based on these values for the food motives here. We then did some analysis where we tried to distinguish different groups of consumers depending on what we call their engagement potential. And we distinguished 3 groups. And the upper line is the one we see high engagement potential, which score highest on the indicators we use here: the attitude to the local food production system, the probability of engaging, the attitude to the product, and the intention to buy the products coming out of that. It's 26% of the population across the 6 regions here, and it's exactly the same here also at the end line. Now, also this one here is stable, so that the potential is still the same. And then we have a medium and also a low engagement. Obviously, there's also a low engagement segment, right? We have 38% of people who we probably don't get being engaged with that type of thing, and obviously that's also worth remembering here. We looked then at which of these variables that we looked at could have an impact on the probability of engaging actually do have the strongest impact, and that's what we see here. Most of them are probably not so surprising. People that score higher on green consumption values, higher on the desire for food authenticity, are more opposed to long-distance food chains, are more for supporting the local actors. They are also more likely to engage with the local food system. Also, if you are more into health and eating, but also if you're more into convenience, and that's maybe interesting because the convenience factor is maybe not the first one we think about when we talk about local food chains. We also have some demographic factors, older people, females, if you have children, higher education, if you have more money, all of this increases the likelihood of being in the high likelihood of engagement segments there. Also the trust, of course. If you have a higher level of trust, you're more likely to engage. We developed a tool, we developed an app, the FuchsLink app, as a tool to communicate with people in these regions here. Now, the idea with the app was that you can use it for multiple things. You can use it, of course, to inform people about what's going on. You can use it to give people information about actors, farmers especially, enabling people to find them, to get into contact with them. The idea was also once these systems actually get working and products are coming out, that you can use them for ordering products, giving feedback about products, making suggestions for new products and all these kinds of things, which we could not implement here as part of the project because we were not that far advanced in the development process. But we do have this instrument now and have implemented it in all the 6 regions there. I said in the beginning, this is about consumer engagement, but maybe I come back for a moment here for the other actors, because we have also learned a number of things about the difficulties we encounter when we try to create consumer engagement. Obviously, it only works if everybody is engaged. If the consumer is engaged, but then some of the farmers are not engaged, obviously it is not working. And some of the farmers, of course, are also not so interested because they sell not locally, but they have some established value chains that have not to do with local customers. So we need, obviously, engagement from all actors in the local network as a prerequisite. Another thing to be aware of in the implementation phase here is when in such a development process one should actually do this here, because in the Fox project we are in the stage now where we have prototypes of these containers here. Other things may happen now in the future, as we have already heard, where these will be employed, and we have business models where they can enter and things like that. At which point and how should we then relate to consumers? Consumers are not interested in the technology itself. No? They may be skeptical about the technology, but if we want to do something about it, we need to communicate about the benefits that they provide for consumers. The benefits are, of course, linked to the products. So we need to communicate, obviously, when there's also something which is tangible for the consumers and do it at the right time in the innovation process. The answer to my first question here was that, yes, there is potential for consumer engagement in local food short supply chains, not for everybody, and we have characterized what that is. Social media and apps can be used as an instrument, but it also requires that everybody is committed. Now I have 2 minutes for the second question, but that's also fine, because I want to add a few things about how to communicate about the local system and the technologies used there to consumers, because as I said in the beginning, that is actually an issue. So we did some experimentation with how that can be done. And that is, as I said, that is important because we know that consumers can be spontaneously negative with regard to modern food technology. One of the things we did, we checked whether one should rather have a cognitive or an affective approach. Cognitive, fact-based, effective, more appealing to emotions, and whether one should have a positive or a negative framing. You can explain the same thing with a positive or a negative framing. You can say in the future the development of food waste will be like this and it goes up, or you can say if you do this here, the food waste will go down. So you say the same thing, but you have a positive or a negative framing. And what that works best, according to what we have, is the emotional and positively framed message. And maybe that's not so surprising, but we know that in the sustainability context, many times we have negative framing because we want to create awareness of where the problems are. And when that is the aim, that is probably also the best approach. But in this case here, where we have something that will have positive effects, that's probably not the best thing. And another thing we did is when we introduce what can be done here, whether one should concentrate more on what comes out in terms of taste and indulgence and enjoyment, or whether one should more try to explain the technology and frame it as a development coming out of something that people already know, a familiarity aspect, an extension of an older technology that people may already know. And the left one is better. The left one works better than the right one, and that's maybe also worth remembering. So we have these conclusions here about how to communicate about what happens in the local food circles and especially the technologies used. And we have some recommendations here with regard to the framing of the message, the use of facts versus emotional appeals and so on, which can help in communicating in a positive way to consumers so that they actually will accept what is being done and become engaged in the local food circle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Klaus, also for being in time. So I accept one question, if there is one. If not, okay, there is one. Minna.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Now, what will be the main way to build citizen trust to food system based on your experience from this research conducted?
Yeah, now fortunately I have done more research on this here about trust. And based on everything I know about trust, consumer trust in the food chain, the short answer is it's openness about what you're doing. Openness of the actors in the food chain and especially food producers.
Okay, good. Thank you, Klaus.